Someone requested that I take a look at this video right here, which is from the YouTube channel Second Thoughts, which, as you can see, has almost 1 million subscribers. This video, titled "Who Benefits from the Privatization of Space?" has over 90,000 views. I've looked at this channel before, so let's take a look at what Second Thought has to say about the privatization of space.
On May 30th, 2020, SpaceX made history by becoming the first private company to launch NASA astronauts into space. The launch was a culmination of years of preparation and development, and despite having to postpone the launch due to weather, when the Falcon 9 rocket lifted off the ground that Saturday, it performed admirably, and the 2 astronauts aboard the crew capsule safely made their way towards the ISS. As groundbreaking as this moment was, it does raise some serious questions about the future of spaceflight and space industry. In this episode, we're going to take a look at past legislation regarding the ownership of space, and how private companies can cooperate with the world's nations to build a brighter future for everyone.
Yeah, who gets to lay claim to space?
Let's start with a little background. In the late 1950s and continuing through the 1960s, the US and the Soviet Union were slugging it out trying to establish superiority in the new realm of outer space. Both superpowers feared the other becoming dominant and placing new types of weapons in Earth orbit, becoming even more dangerous to each other and the rest of the world. After a very tense period of international competition, the US, UK, and the Soviet Union came together and signed what's informally known as the Outer Space Treaty. This document was the first of its kind, and attempted to establish a basis for international space law.
International space law, you guys.
Today, over 100 countries are party to the treaty, with over 20 more working towards ratification. At its core, the Outer Space Treaty is a non-nuclear agreement. It doesn't prohibit military activities in space, nor even the placement of conventional weapons, but it does explicitly ban the use of weapons of mass destruction. It also stipulates that space and celestial bodies must be free to explore by all nations, and that no party may lay claim to any region of space or celestial body.
No one party can lay claim to space or any celestial body? Does he mean countries or just anyone?
This is all well and good, but the problem with the Outer Space Treaty is that it was drafted back in the 1960s, when our understanding of space was considerably more limited than it is today, which means much of the language was left fairly ambiguous. Fast forward to more recent years, and we've learned that asteroids are often full of incredibly valuable resources, and that we might be able to mine them. There are even some reports to suggest a particular asteroid could be worth upwards of $20 trillion. That's one way to get the attention of large corporations and eccentric billionaires.
Wow, $20 trillion! That's so much money! That'd be really cool if someone could figure out how to get those resources and bring them back to Earth. Because I don't know about you guys. I mean, what are these? Asteroids are like, what, millions of miles away, I believe? I guess depending on the asteroid. But either way, I don't know about you guys, but I don't really have the means of going to these asteroids, much less mining them for resources and bringing them back with me to Earth. Like, say I were to drive for Uber or Lyft, and someone one day requested a ride and asked if I could take them to the nearest asteroid to collect some space rocks, maybe some Pokemon on Pokemon Go along the way. If a situation like that were to happen, I would have to politely decline, because that's a little above my pay grade. I do not have the means to travel to asteroids. But if a billionaire or a corporation can do it and bring back resources, I think that sounds pretty cool.
Billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. And conveniently, the Outer Space Treaty doesn't explicitly say you can't extract celestial resources as long as you don't claim the area from which you're extracting them. But just to be safe, the US passed the Space Act of 2015, which clarified the country's position on their rights in outer space. The law explicitly allows US citizens and corporations to engage in the commercial exploration and exploitation of space resources, including water and minerals. As some of the world's richest individuals suit up to build their own space resource extraction operations, we should look back to a forgotten episode of the...
So he mentioned that no one's allowed to lay claim. He reiterated that point. No one should be allowed to lay claim to parts of space. Could you guys imagine trying to enforce this space law, the laws of space? Like, imagine someone like Elon Musk successfully builds a spacecraft, we'll call it a spaceship, that's capable of reaching Mars, and he announces that he's hiring a team of a few dozen scientists, engineers, and astronauts, and they're going to get on that spaceship, and they're going to go to Mars, and they're going to lay claim to, say, I don't know, 100,000 acres of land on Mars, so that they can build a little space colony, and then they all get on the spaceship, and off they go over to Mars to lay claim and build some colonies, folks. Now, could you imagine a government or a coalition of governments coming together and imposing taxes on people like myself to raise money so that they can fund a military or a space police force to go over to Mars, go all the way to Mars to find Elon Musk, to wag their fingers and say, hey, Elon, what are you doing? You are violating international space law, buddy. Does anyone give this much of a shit to enforce this international space law? Really? Is this what we're gonna do?
Early days of space exploration. Back in the 1960s, a group of underdeveloped nations banded together to form a coalition known as the Group of 77. This group used the strength of their numbers among UN nations to try to influence international space law to prevent it from disproportionately benefiting the world's wealthiest countries. Their goal was a more equitable distribution of profits derived from outer space resources. They believed that space was the common heritage of all humankind.
So he's talking about the Group of 77. And I should start off by saying that the United Nations is a useless organization, which I made a whole video about a while back, and so I'm not going to go off on that tangent. If anyone's curious about my thoughts about the United Nations, check out that video. But let's check out this Group of 77 that he's talking about. Look at the Group of 77. These are the countries in the Group of 77, and this is a reason why I think the United Nations is a useless organization. As you can see, these countries are largely poorer and impoverished countries, and the reason for that is because they are led by mystics and thugs who make it difficult, if not impossible, for their people to rise out of poverty because they're at war with the productive and the people of the mind. And if anyone thinks I'm exaggerating with this, consider the first country on this list, as you can see, is Afghanistan. Not sure if anyone's too familiar with Afghanistan, but they're a country that appears to have elements of Sharia law, like blasphemy and anti-apostasy laws. Yeah, whatever you guys do, don't think too much outside the box in Afghanistan, especially considering that many parts of the country are still controlled by the Taliban. You know, the Taliban, an organization who is known, who has a history of shooting little girls in the face for the crime of trying to go to school.
Now that's fucked up.
Gee, I wonder why countries like Afghanistan are impoverished and lack cool things like privatized space programs. And a second thought over here is essentially arguing that these greedy corporations and billionaires that go into space and bring a bunch of cool space rocks back to Earth, that Afghanistan deserves some of the space rocks. And not just Afghanistan. As you can see, there's countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia and North Korea and Venezuela. You know, by what right do these countries have to organize to go around and tell other people that go into outer space, use their mind and productive effort to go into outer space to bring trillions of dollars back of wealth? By what rights do these countries who are led by mystics and thugs have to demand that other people give them some space rocks that they never would have earned on their own?
And as such should be utilized to benefit the entire human population, and to help fund underdeveloped nations rather than let extraordinary wealth pile up in the hands of a few powerful countries. The Group of 77 understood the language of the Outer Space Treaty to call for a new economic order that would reduce global poverty and increase the well-being of all nations. The treaty says, the exploration and use of outer space shall be carried out for the benefit and in the interest of all countries, irrespective of their degree of economic or scientific development, and shall be the province of all mankind. In 1970, one delegate to the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space proposed a new legal designation for the final frontier, that of the common heritage of mankind. This was a fairly new idea, originally applied to maritime law
Now, putting aside the obvious collectivism, a reminder that the stuff we're talking about here, the space rocks, is millions of miles away, way beyond the grasp of everyone on Earth. So how can everyone have a right to something that they are not even capable of acquiring in the first place?
a few years earlier. If space were given this designation, it would lend legal support for the democratic distribution of revenues derived from outer space. In 1973, the group officially called for an amendment to the Outer Space Treaty to include the common heritage language. One delegate neatly summed up the group's position, saying, "It does not seem justifiable that space activities should evolve in a climate of total laissez-faire, which would conceal under the cloak of rationality new ways for an abusive exercise of power by those who exert control over technology."
Those who exert control over the technology? You mean the technology that they own and that they've developed and paid for? Is that what you're talking about? It's like the other day when that goof Ted Cruz was harassing the Twitter founder and CEO Jack Dorsey, asking him, who elected you to be in charge of Twitter? And it's like, idiots. The guy literally created the technology. Now he needs permission from the rest of society to run his business. But I guess in the case of space exploration, explorers now need permission from the rest of the world.
Despite pushback from both the US and the Soviet Union, not to mention a horde of angry businessmen, the final version of the draft did include the Common Heritage language. In 1979, when the amendment came up for ratification, it was met with intense opposition, including pushback from the Reagan administration, and eventually the group had to abandon it. Another group made a similar attempt in 1988 and was also forced into submission. By 1996, the United States had clarified their stance on the benefit clause to mean vague assurances of helping underdeveloped nations build their own space technology. The final word from the UN
Underdeveloped nations like Afghanistan? Again, why do they deserve a space program?
Outer Space Committee came in 2014, when they put out an article summarizing their recent meeting. Its headline read, "Outer space benefits must not be allowed to widen global gap between economic, social inequality," Fourth Committee told. And that was that. They paid lip service to the past efforts of their members, but embraced the position of equal access instead of democratic accountability and distribution. Returning to today, we're nearing the end of our opportunity to ensure space industry is democratically regulated. What we're facing is not just a new era of space exploration. It's essentially the handing of a key to an inaccessible realm to the world's richest people. If
handing a key to an inaccessible realm, no, space is just out there. And if someone can figure out how to go explore space, I think they have every right to. I mean, who's the rest of the world, the rest of the planet to gang up and tell people whether or not they can explore space?
Smaller nations and individuals from around the world speak up now, we could make a real difference here at the beginning of a new era. It's not just national bragging rights that are at stake. It's a political and economic struggle over the very nature of the celestial commons. There are two possible outcomes: the massive intensification of inequality, or the potential for the elevation of
the massive intensification of inequality. I think this is where it becomes clear that alleviating poverty is not the concern. Imagine knowing that there are billionaires who are willing and eager to bring trillions of dollars worth of resources to Earth, thereby increasing the potential for everyone on Earth to enrich themselves, and then knowing that the reason why they're not doing it is because people like Second Thought are worried that they're going to become richer as a result, thereby widening the inequality gap. Because if nobody on Earth goes to get those beloved resources, those beloved space rocks, then the impoverished people of Earth will still be suffering in poverty. But hey, I guess at least we can tell them that the inequality gap isn't as high. This is not about the concern for the poor or the less fortunate. This is about not wanting people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk to have too much money. This knucklehead would rather the cosmos be untouched by man because he hates the idea of billionaires getting richer.
All people and a movement towards an egalitarian world. If billionaires, and soon-to-be trillionaires like Jeff Bezos, are allowed to transcend even the resource limits of the Earth and access cosmic resources beyond the reach of the entirety of mankind, they will amass godlike power. The sheer dollar value of off-Earth resources is...
He's worried about billionaires having godlike powers, really? When he invokes the group of 77 whose members try to act like gods with the way they impose their will on the societies that they rule. And again, Second Thought over here thinks that they're all entitled to resources that are millions of miles away, way beyond their grasp, that they would never attain on their own. So yeah, let's give the Taliban and the Ayatollah and the Saud royal family and commie goon Kim Jong-un and the rest of the dictators and despots of the world, let's give them a share of the space rocks so that Jeff Bezos doesn't have godlike powers.
Is simply unfathomable, and the repercussions of allowing all that wealth to flow into the bank account of a handful of ultra-wealthy and powerful people would have disastrous effects.
See, he's really concerned. He's so concerned about dollars flowing into the bank accounts of billionaires.
Instead of buying yachts, football teams, and private islands, space industrialists could buy entire nations. This capitalist techno-utopia would look less like Star Trek and more like Altered Carbon, with those who benefit from space industry physically separated from the unwashed masses and completely above the law and any repercussions for their actions. Space should be considered the common heritage of all of humanity. Like Alaska's Sovereign Wealth Fund, which delivers a percentage of oil revenue to its residents, the same could be done for the inhabitants of planet Earth. Yes, compensate the companies involved in the extraction, but distribute the wealth in a manner that reflects a democratic vision of outer space. If we choose to see the space beyond Earth as an international commons, it would give us a fantastic opportunity.
The international commons, again, he's talking about stuff that's like way beyond the grasp of everyone, and suddenly everyone has a right to it. Do I have a right to like a star that's, you know, billions of light years away? Do I get a claim to that? What about a black hole?
opportunity to experiment with redistributive mechanisms beyond the usual confines of nation-states. If we can think big picture and establish a sovereign wealth fund for the entire Earth, imagine what that could do for our species and the planet.
Talks about thinking big picture, and then he wants to punish the people who actually think big picture and want to explore space.
As space resource extraction grows and becomes a more profitable industry, redistribution of the revenue could create a genuine, global universal basic income, freeing citizens the world over from crippling poverty, elevating developing nations, and furthering the advancement of the entire species. The windfall from space industry could allow nations to invest in clean energy, public works programs, education, and their own space programs, easing the burden on the already existing ones.
Yeah, it sounds like one delicious omelet he's talking about. Just gotta break a few eggs first. Perhaps even slaughter the chicken that lays the eggs.
Superabundance of resources like platinum that are scarce here on Earth could potentially allow for an expansion of automation to the extent that output is dramatically increased and the need for human labor reduced, allowing all people more time to spend with their loved ones and pursue things like the arts, which benefit everyone. There's nothing wrong with making money from space resources, as long as that money is distributed equitably. Now is the time to start talking about the democratization of outer space. Either it benefits everyone, or we're headed for a dystopia of inequality we cannot yet begin to fathom. Outer space shouldn't be about flag waving and conquest, but about the expansion of human potential beyond the bounds of Earth, in a way that elevates all of us.
So he talks about distributing the money democratically. So think about this for a second. I'm sure some of you watching at home may have, at one point in your life, maybe multiple points in your life, have ordered delivery pizza.
Give me pizza!
Think about how excited you get whenever you do this. You place the order, and usually the pizza arrives at your door within an hour. And you happily pay for that pizza. And if you're not a total scumbag, you might even tip your delivery driver on top of it. But think about what's happening on a broader level here. What's happening is a businessman in your area has acquired the resources necessary to make that pizza, from the ingredients, which probably comes from farms and ranches, tens, if not hundreds of miles away. He has to gather the cooking utensils necessary to prepare the pizza. He has to provide an oven to bake the pizza in. And you happily pay him to acquire these resources that are beyond your grasp, turn it into a delicious pizza pie, and then bring it all to your front door to enjoy. Now, if a businessman tried to mine asteroids and other planets for resources to bring back to Earth to sell, well, I would say that that's pizza delivery times a gazillion. And this mentality that we're going to meet the space deliverers upon return, including the group of 77 as invoked in this video, like countries like Haiti and Guatemala and Iran and Venezuela and Qatar and Saudi Arabia. We're going to get together with all these countries to meet these space deliverers upon return and demand that they share what they've managed to acquire. Well, that would be the same as trying to rob your pizza delivery guy. Because after all, you can apply this same argument to a pizza franchise. After all, if I don't eat, I might starve to death. On top of that, there are people all over the world who cannot afford to eat. Meanwhile, people like Mike Ilitch and Papa John and everyone else involved in Big Pizza, well, they're increasing the inequality gap by becoming billionaires from delivering pizzas. We should therefore democratically distribute all of the pizza that they make.